There we go.
Very good. Good evening, members of council, staff, ladies and gentlemen. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for Committee of the Whole to order. It has been moved by Councillor Papp that the agenda for the February 5th, 2018 regular meeting of committee be adopted. Wondered if there's any changes to the agenda. I know that there was an individual here that wanted to hear one of the items, 431. Councillor Kersey?
Mr. Mayor, let's move item 431 up to the top of the agenda if we can. The individual was here, waited through all of that council meeting. In the event that she returns, let's deal with it first.
Okay, thank you.
Out of respect for her.
All right, thank you. So the amendment is to move up 431. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. And now to the rest of the agenda as amended. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members of council have any pecuniary interest they need to declare? Looks like there isn't any.
Mayor.
Thank you. Can that be so noted? The first item to deal with is 431, request to review the firearms bylaw. It has been moved by Councillor Durley. The Committee of the Whole received the correspondence January 8th, 2018 from Amanda Johnson requesting the town review the discharge of firearms bylaw and staff be directed to review the bylaw and prepare a recommendation report to council. I know that the chief was just speaking with Ms. Johnson. I don't know if there's anything you want to comment from that, but you're going to work with the resident on this issue, Chief?
Hey, Mr. Mayor, we've been looking at this for a while now because we have the bylaw is outdated. We're one of the few municipalities left that does not allow hunting on Sundays, so there's some pressure on that side of it that people want to be allowed to hunt on Sundays. And then the discharge of firearms, current bylaw says within the urban boundary. Well, with all the expansion and all the development we have in town, I think that outline needs to be expanded. And with the problems with coyotes in the province, especially in the southern Ontario, you're allowed to hunt coyotes year round. And under the current M&R bylaws, you're allowed to use a firearm up to a 275, which you might not know what that is, but it's a high-powered rifle within the area. So we probably should look at. We were looking at that also. So there's a number of things that we've been working on for a while, and her issue is just kind of one thing.
Okay, so she highlights one item, and you're going to look at a few others. Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief or comments? Certainly appreciate Ms. Johnson raising the issue and being here for the council portion, and then I did have a conversation with her as well, along with the fire chief, so thank you. I'm going to call the question on that receipt and recommendation for a report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Perhaps that can be communicated to Ms. Johnson. Thank you. Now we go back to the order here, and the first item is community planning. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey. The Committee of the Whole received the December 2017, January 2018 Community Planning and Development Monthly Report for information. Questions or comments regarding that report? Councillor Papp.
As always, through you to the Director, what are the dates for the comprehensive zoning bylaw public meetings? Do you have some idea when that'll happen?
Thank you.
I don't mean to bug you, but it's been on the agenda here for...
Yeah.
No
I feel like I've been
worries.
here as long as this has been on agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, no worries. I'm currently in the process of trying to schedule some public
Okay.
meetings and coordinating that with the consultant. So hopefully by the end of this week, I can report back to council on some dates.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Any
That's it.
others to that matter? Any others to other matters in the planning report? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our Director. I wonder, Madam Director, if you could give us an update on the East Fenwick public meeting that was held on January 27th.
Madam Director.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, we did have a public information meeting with the community last Saturday. I guess it was not this past one, but a week plus ago. And that was held in the morning at the Pelham, or the Fenwick Fire Hall. It was fairly well attended. We probably had somewhere between 50 and 60 people there. The consultants did a kind of a review of the project to date and then presented the proposed land use plan to the community, and was getting feedback from the community with respect to the various types of land uses and the densities. So in the area of East Fenwick, it's proposed that it will be developed for residential uses. There really is not a need for commercial use, and the thinking is that with the future residential growth that may happen in East Fenwick, that will help support and promote kind of the village, the commercial core of Fenwick, and support it. So feeling that there is no need for additional commercial lands. So there essentially are kind of like 3 different neighborhoods that are being proposed. Within each neighborhood, there's a 5-minute walk to a central meeting place, which would be a small park, parkette, or an area that's been set aside as probably a natural heritage area that might have a park component to it, and then trails through a natural heritage system. The land use is primarily residential, maintaining kind of the existing single detached residential built form along Canberra Road, Memorial Road, and Welland Road. And then in the interior of the areas, you would have perhaps some higher densities, could be townhouses and maybe even small apartment buildings, maybe a small apartment building at the end or the gateway coming into to Fenwick, in order to meet our density targets that we are obligated to meet. And so that's kind of a high-level overview of it. Overall, the land use plan was, I would say, was fairly well received by the community. There was some questions about the timing and when this will unfold and how quick will it happen and the rate of development, and some people thought the town owned these lands and would be developing this, and so we provide some clarification that no, these are lands that are in private ownership. The town is doing the planning so that they can be brought on board to develop, but the timing on when that happens is really up to the landowner and the market. And if the landowner is satisfied that the market is right to bring a land on board for development, then they would proceed with their subdivision application and their studies and so forth. So we also explained that this would be, probably a 10 to 15 year build out. It doesn't happen immediately overnight. And within the one area associated with some natural heritage features around a woodland, there is going to be the need for further environmental studies to be done to really define the edge of that feature. But that will come when there's a plan of subdivision coming forward. At a high level, the secondary plan has certainly identified that there is something there from a natural heritage perspective, but where the actual edge is, because there's an old Christmas tree plantation there, and what is its value from a natural heritage perspective should really be looked at more in more detail than the very high level than what we did as part of the secondary plan. So we had a good conversation and discussion with the public. They were asked to fill out some questions at the end of the meeting. We had a lot of back and forth with one-on-one questions, and when we got down to them working at their tables with the people to respond to questions around the type of built form that they'd like to see in the most comfortable walking distance to a destination, not many people stayed around to provide that feedback and input, but there were some responses that we did get, and so that will be valuable. What's also important to note is that same week, earlier that week, the consultants had come down and had done a session with, I think it was 3 geography classes at the high school. So they got some good feedback again from the youth in terms of what they value as being important in a community. So it's all coming together. The next step will be, certainly the consultants are now working on the policy. I'm hoping to get a draft document by the end of this month, and then we will be coming back to council with that as a complete document. There's the actual plan and then the policies to implement the plan.
Thank you very much. Wow. Councillor Kersey, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Director. You clarified a number of points that I wanted to see the public get understanding around. I have a question in terms of the secondary plan and what it might look like. As we flesh it out and bring it forward, will it block out areas of environmental sensitivity, block out areas where there'll be higher density, the types of housing? Will it include urban design guidelines, all of those sort of things? And will it define studies that developers will have to undertake prior to approval of any plans of subdivision as they bring it forward?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes. The plan will identify where we will have kind of the larger single detached dwellings, and then where there would be more density in built form in terms of townhouses and apartments. So the plan will lay that out. There will be policies to provide that type of guidance. With respect to areas defined for natural heritage, there definitely are some there that we know where the limits are because they are provincially significant wetlands, and they are a no-go in terms of development. There is existing development in those areas. That existing development will be allowed to continue, and there are current policies that allow for very limited expansion of development within wetlands where they do exist. The other natural heritage feature is a woodland. There's some wood hedgerows that have also been identified as opportunities for preservation, and the consultants are putting together, similar to the East Font Hill plan, they're putting together demonstration plans to show how those things can be integrated with a road and a lot pattern. There will also be urban design guidelines as part of this package, so that's all to come forward. It's a very comprehensive plan for such a small area, but it will provide a lot of guidance for the developers. There will be some additional studies that they will be required to do, and that will be laid out. We know that there's going to be some improvements to servicing that's going to be needed. That will be identified in the secondary plan, and then one of those additional studies that we know is in the area around this one woodland, that there will be some further environmental work. And then on an individual development basis, they would still also be required to do kind of archaeological assessments and so forth as a development application proceeds.
Thank you, Ms. Wiens. Councillor Kersey? you
One
said you had
further
one more?
question, Mr. Chair. One of the things, and Councillor Papp can attest to this, one of the things that allowed the East Font Hill secondary plan to move forward once the town became the driver was the built-in flexibility around the neighborhood plan concept, such that even though the demonstration plans laid out street layouts and blocking of densities and all of that, within that East Font Hill master plan, there was a description of a neighborhood plan where a developer maybe didn't like that particular blocking out, but could bring forward a neighborhood plan provided that he could more or less meet the densities and demonstrate that he captured the intent of the plan. I know this is a much smaller area, but will we have that similar flexibility built in to allow some creativity on the part of the developer?
Mr. Mayor, through you. Yes, there will be that. I think what's also important is we've had the developer community be part of the steering committee on this project, so they have very much been involved, and they too have been feeding back to the consultants some design concepts that they're working on that we can integrate. So there has been that back and forth with them, but there will also be that flexibility. Because as I indicated, particularly in the one area where we don't know exactly where the limits of that environmental feature will be, we need to have some flexibility to allow for, some changes and some adjustments to potential street locations or things such as that in order to make the development work.
Wonderful, great work, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any others? Questions for East Fenwick? I'm sorry, Councilor.
Not a
Go
question,
ahead.
just a comment, and it's concerning the East Fun Hill Secondary Plan. I believe we were required to hold one public meeting, and this was the third one, so I think I could commend staff going the extra mile to make sure that all the questions are answered and answered properly. I think going out of that meeting, there are still some people that didn't quite get it, but the staff and the consultant are to be commended in the effort in a professional manner in which they conducted themselves. I was there, and I was very pleased to see just exactly how the meeting went, and there were times where it was going off a tangent, and everybody brought it back down, and anybody who went away not understanding it didn't want to, I don't think, but certainly staff is to be commended and a consultant to be commended for doing an excellent job in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durley. Yes, you were present. I was as well. You have a good overview of what occurred. Lots of questions as the consultant was going through the presentation. Ms. Weens answered them. The consultant answered them as well. So it was a really great back and forth. There were a few that stuck around at the end, and I know the folks that were around me, and they were saying, well, I'm concerned about one of the things that wasn't mentioned, stormwater. And this is the way the water flows this way, and this is the way the water flows this way. We want to make sure that that's in there. And I said, well, write it down, because as the consultant said, these are the policies that are going to be developed. So we needed that information on the sheet. I know they were also taking notes. But the idea is that once the information is there and it comes from the community, then the policies are adapted. That was sort of the learning from the folks that were around me, like, oh, you want me to put this in here, why? Well, so that the policies can address your concerns. And so a few of them, understood that and wrote them down on the sheets so that those policies would be there to address it. So, thank you very much. Anyone else on East Fenwick? Okay. Anyone else on any of the other items in the director's report? Madam Director, it's hard to tell very quickly the comparison of building activities, and I wondered if there might be a year-end report that's going to be coming. I know a few other councils have announced what their building activities were. Is that I thought that was a normal process, and if so, when will that come forward?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we can bring that information forward to you in our next COW report.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it'd be interesting to just kind of see the numbers for the year. Hard to tell with the graph, although we certainly appreciate the graph and showing that 2017, certainly through the summer, was much, much higher than 2016. Lots of activity in 2016 as well as 17 in the fall. So just wanted to know about that. Anyone else? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now we move to the Corporate Services Monthly Report, and the motion is the Committee of the Whole receive the December 2017, January 2018 Corporate Services Monthly Report for information. We're pleased that Ms. Tunakaitis is here to answer any questions or concerns should that be required. Councillor Kersey wants to start it off. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if I have a question, but maybe an observation and a suggestion. And that goes around the section marked constituent concerns and issues arising. We asked staff some time ago to compile a cost estimate with respect to the discussions we've had, shall we call them discussions that we've had with the region since March 2017. And I note in the report, exclusive of staff time, that those totals are $165,287 to date. And I would venture a guess that if we factored in staff time, we'd be well in excess of the $200,000 mark. These are costs that impact our community directly. And if one looks at that, it's approximately, I'm going to say almost 1.5 points on our levy, which is significant.
Absolutely.
When our overall increase is 3.5, and you're looking at 1.5 with respect to the cost just to deal with the region. So what I'm going to put forward to my colleagues and to staff is that I think we should give some consideration to sending a bill to the region with an itemized accounting of the costs that we have. We could copy the bills that we've received and hand it over to the region and respectfully request, at least at this stage, that they forward us a check for $165,287. And on our part, we'll absorb the cost of our staff time as our offset, and their contribution to trying to bring clarity around all these issues to the community of $165,287. I don't think that's an unrealistic request, and let's see how they respond, and then we can discuss next steps if we need to. I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues might have to say about that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ribbiak is wading into the discussion. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Christie, for the suggestion. I think it'd be great if we could get that covered. Just wondering whether we shouldn't do just a little bit of research into whether there's any legislation, regulation, or any hook that we can hang that on so that it's not viewed as just a shot, but rather as a serious pursuit of a legitimate and well-defined objective. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, Mr. CEO, if you can respond
I don't
to that.
I don't have an answer, Mr. Mayor, directly, but it's something that staff could look into and get back to the to council about.
Okay. Others? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll comment on it. We've heard from our own legal counsel throughout all of this process that all of these discussions have been outside the jurisdiction of the region. And because of the fact that the region treaded into our affairs and imposed themselves in our affairs and imposed themselves between our constituents and us, we had to incur these costs to try and address the issues that the region brought forward and continues to bring forward. So if you look at the Municipal Act, it defines what the spheres of influence are. And quite clearly, they overstepped their authority by entering into our financial affairs. So perhaps we need to get legal to clarify that as a hook, as you say. I think they've made it very clear. In fact, our lawyer went to regional council, as I remember, and made that very clear to regional council. And that we would be looking to them for costs should we incur. And in fact, they continued. So I think we have a legitimate case to go towards them to ask for those costs to be reimbursed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Ribbiak, and then I'm going to try and
Thank
put
you.
a bow around this.
Yeah, absolutely. Just very quickly. Indeed, I see Councillor Kersey's point, and I agree with it. So if we could indeed have some confirmation that there is a basis of what it would essentially be a suit, if we wanted to pursue it that way, then I would certainly be supportive of it.
Thank you. I'm not sure that folks are saying that we pursue it that way. I think it started off in terms of sending something to the region in terms of the bill. So let's maybe not, let's not run before we walk. Councillor Lane?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I kind of just only have one comment, and that is that at the end of the day, we had a choice to do or to not do this. And I think we took it upon ourselves to do this, and I know what the surrounding demographics were based on what the region was saying, but we didn't have to do this, if I'm understanding it correctly. So I think although it'd be nice to get some money out of the region, I think the chances of that happening are probably pretty slim. And at the end of the day, we could have got our backs up and said, no, we're not gonna do this audit, and not incurred the cost. And, but that's just my comment on it.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor Papp?
Very quickly, I think I've said this all along, and it sounds redundant. It's an encroachment on our ability to operate legally as a municipal corporation. It's not just about the finances, it's about everything we do every day, A to Z. In my career and what I've seen there, it's unprecedented. And it'll continue again on Thursday night. Finances, whatever. So the question is, I need to be clear, and well, I don't know about, I'd like to get solid legal advice on that. Just as the lame person, they have no jurisdiction, none. And I think the endorsement of the resolution from the city of Port Colborne just goes on. They're finally starting to understand. Would we like to collaborate and work with the region? Yes. I've come to the conclusion that doesn't seem to be the game here, so maybe there's only one thing, and that is you gotta say, stay out of our backyard, just as we said 12 months ago, we said that, when that first thing came from Port Colborne. And I stand by it, so I think we need to find out legally too where we stand. I thought that was made clear to them, but obviously it wasn't.
Thank you. Councillor Durley?
I concur with what Councillor Kersey is saying, and the whole issue, I think, is somebody needs to take action, because if this happened to Pelham, it's going to happen to every other municipality, and I think the St. Catharines resolution basically pointed out that fact that, what happened to Pelham could happen to any one of the 12 municipalities, so definitely there has to be put a stop to it, and in fact, since we're the hardest hit victim, we need, I think, to do some action on this, and this would be an excellent way to start the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I agree with Councillor Lane's point that we didn't have to do that audit,
Please.
I do think that we were reacting to legal advice that we received to perform that. So when I look at the numbers and I look how they're broken down between the audit and legal, and our staff costs aren't even here, I concur with Councillor Kersey that we need to move forward. And we need to submit the bill for all of the reasons that have been stated. They were in our backyard when they had no business being there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I did have a bit of a side conversation. I know Councillor Papp did just as well with the CAO, and this is committee, so maybe just giving direction to staff to come forward with, it sounds like there's a couple of things. One, sort of the legal piece. Councillor Papp, you spoke to that. Councillor Kersey, you spoke to that. Do we want to get a quick legal opinion on this? The other would be simply to kind of put a resolution to council to say, you know what, send the bill, and that could come to council. So maybe we could just leave it, direct staff to kind of look at the issue a little bit more and come forward with a recommendation at our next council meeting. Perfect. On the 20th of February. And kind of leave it that way. Okay, give us their best advice on that. So they may consult a little bit as well.
Perfect.
Okay?
Perfect.
So Madam Clerk, if that can be included in the minutes, that there's direction, and when we approve this resolution, that's incumbent in it. Okay, thank you. Good discussion. Anything further under the corporate services? I did just want to quickly highlight and thank the treasurer and the deputy treasurer and the staff for looking at the taxes receivable. So it looks like they looked at something that was there for a number of years and said, you know what, this is something that we can address. So I just want to thank staff for that, looking at that. So that taxes receivable are those that haven't been able to pay the taxes within the time allotted. Maybe you can just quickly comment on that, Ms. Tunikaitis.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. We have a balance of taxes receivable that sits in our financial statements and had been a fairly consistent amount over time, which is normal for a municipality to have a certain portion that are in arrears or haven't yet been collected. And so this year, the tax clerk took several initiatives by contacting people, arranging payment plans, and so on, and managed to decrease the receivable balance by $418,000. So collected that additional money, that now that's no longer cash that we're waiting to collect. So it was a great initiative this year, and I would say a big success.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Give you a bonus.
Thank you, yeah. Something to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thanks for highlighting that. I'm going to call the question then on corporate services. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries, and that direction is embedded in that resolution. And please pass along thanks to the staff that worked so hard on the arrears portion. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Oh, sorry, we did that one already. My apologies. It's been moved by Councillor King that the Committee of the Whole receive the December 2017, January 2018 Fire and Bylaw Services Monthly Report for information. Questions or comments to this report? Councillor Papp, Councillor Ribbiak. Go ahead, Councillor Papp.
Very quickly through you to the chief and the members of your staff. Thank you for addressing the odor problem coming from the facilities there. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but a couple of days it was obvious. You could smell it, and you responded very effectively, your staff, and then right now it seems like it's under control. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ribbiak, is it the same issue? Or?
It is the same
Okay,
issue,
go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, and I too want to, through you, thank the chief for the report. Left me with some questions, and I'm just wondering whether we might ask the chief to perhaps expand on his report with regard to some of these questions. And I just find it kind of frustrating that we have the issue. It's in somebody else's jurisdiction. We, of course, are the ones, as is usual, left with people asking us questions and looking for us to resolve them. So my questions have to do with the, and I've written these on this private comment thing, and I should have written things out more completely. But the OMC, that's the Office of the OMC. Is that
Medical cannabis.
is that the Marijuana Council, medical cannabis? That's what it is. The
Office of Medical
Yeah, that's
Cannabis
what it is.
Health
Good,
Canada.
thank you. So I wonder whether we can find out how the OMC responds to complaints. You know, what is their process? Do they investigate complaints? I think we should find that out. Do they have the resources to investigate complaints? It wouldn't be the first time that a body of legislation sat there, but there was no funding or support for it to be carried out. So whether they have the budget or the staff or the equipment to deal with that. If they do that sort of thing, how long typically does it take the OMC to respond to the kinds of things that we talk about here? What standard? Do they have any standards by which they determine whether or not a problem exists? I can write these in an email, but my point is, and I have some other questions with regard to this as well. We get these complaints. People have an expectation that we will do something about it. I mean, quite clearly, the people who make the complaints are surprised to find that, gee, we don't have an odor bylaw, or we don't have some means of dealing with it. And I think that to say to people with a complaint like that, look, here's a phone number someplace else, call them and they'll look after it. I just don't find that to be enough. I'd like to be able to know that when I say to somebody, here's the number to call, it's who they are, what you can expect by way of a process from them. If that process isn't happening, how do you know it's, you know, a time to react, that sort of thing. So these questions have to do with the OMC. It's not a criticism to our staff or anything.
Okay, let's see if we can get some of the questions, but I think some of those questions, Councillor, are actually related to our member of parliament because it is regulated federally. So they're not in our purview. It's regulated. It's regulated by the federal government. I'm going to turn to the chief if you can quickly
Here, Mr.
just
Mayor,
give us a quick response on some of the questions from the counselor?
Real quick response on it, but,
I
so
don't
we
think
have
you
a
have results.
body, a governing body that is the licensor that issues a license to a group of people to grow a product. The property they're on is zoned agricultural. It was a greenhouse operation, whether they're growing cucumbers or flowers or marijuana. They have the right to be there. We have, and as far as the jurisdiction goes, yeah, we do have there is some language that says we have the right to, but there's nothing that gives us the authority to enforce it. Everything we've worked on to date is that they just keep directing us to the website. We've talked to them, we've been told it was we were directed to the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration down in Niagara Lake. They say, no, it's not their jurisdiction, go back to the Health Canada. Go back to the Health Canada website. We've talked to a few bodies there, and again, and I think you said it correctly, is that they've established something, but they didn't put any of the administration behind it to do all that work. So there's no inspectors, there's nobody. So this is similar, the way I view this is similar like the airport. I really don't have any authority in the airport, that's federally governed, but when we go there, the people cooperate. So we don't really have the authority to go in there and tell these people what to do, when to do it. But we have been going there, and a number of the other places we've been going into, meeting with them and talking to them and getting their ideas. And they've been very cooperative, and since our visits and some of the meetings we've had, the Foss Road operation has fixed their air handling units. So their licensor, the Health Canada, that part of their license agreement is that if it's a commercial operation, they will have air handling equipment to deodorize their manufacturing operation. They do. They have in place, and we have 6 commercial places operating in Pelham right now, and this is the first one that really has had a problem. And they had a company come in, it took them about a week, but we go there every day and we monitor it, and we kind of, and we haven't, in the last few days, we haven't had any odor coming from the place. So we've been in Balfour, the new place down there, we've been through that a couple times, and they seem to have their ducks in a row, so. Even if we had an odor bylaw, I'm not trying to skirt this, I'm just saying, is if we had the language in a bylaw saying that you cannot have an obnoxious odor, first of all, what's an obnoxious odor to one person is not to another person. How do we monitor it or determine that it is from that place, and what levels are acceptable or not acceptable? And then when we do that, how do I enforce that? So I lay orders against this property because they're having a smelly crop. It could be years of court, and we get nothing, no satisfaction from that. We could be locked up in a legal battle, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the judge just goes, that's just the way it is. It's legal in Canada. Live with it. So the present, and to add to this problem we're going to have is that as of July 1st, if the legislation goes through the way it's proposed, every resident in Canada will be allowed to grow up to 4 plants in their backyard. Well, you know what? I got neighbors on all 4 sides of me, and if everybody grows 4 plants, I'm going to have an odor problem. So it's,
You won't have to grow any.
I think this is it's in an infancy stage, and that the people are upset because they're not used to it. It's going to become a problem moving down the road. So,
Okay, thanks, Chief. Just to build on some of that, I did have a conversation with Mr. Allison, our Member of Parliament. He did indicate that he's not involved in this. His office says that when they call, they are notified, and Health Canada says, we're monitoring it, we're in control, we're not going to tell you anything, sort of thing. But when we issued the news release on Friday, we did say, you can notify the town. You can also please notify the Member of Parliament, or and we had some complaints from folks in Welland because this facility is close to the, residents in Welland, and they would call their MP as well. So notify so that they know about it and they can monitor it. And then when the time is appropriate, it can be raised. I had a conversation with the regional director from the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change about this as well, because I know that they also regulate some agricultural practices. And she essentially said the federal legislation under which this particular operation operates under says that they cannot emit odor. So it is clear if they cannot do that under their license, it's an issue that they have to regulate, so, and monitor. So it is federally regulated, this particular there's 3 different types of doing it. We don't have time to go into that all tonight in terms of the different ways. So, you know, staff are following up and working on it, but it is, in essence, a federally regulated process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to you and the chief for shedding more light on this, and I do certainly appreciate it. If there is a body of legislation out there, and if there's a process that needs to be applied when complaints like this arise, I think, given the number of operations that we have in our municipality, and given the number of times in which our residents are going to look to us to deal with something whenever it arises, I'd certainly like to hear more from it. And I'm wondering whether we can't invite an appropriate part of the federal government to come here and give us an explanation of what it is and how it is that they're going to go about enforcing this regulation that they're putting together. I'm sure we're not the only community which is developing a pretty large presence for that kind of industry here. So it can't be something that they're not giving some thought to, but I do think that we ought to be in a position to know what the situation is so that we can, through staff or ourselves as councillors, be able to provide some greater information than, gee, you know, thanks for the complaint and I'll pass it on, but it's out of our jurisdiction, don't know what the heck we can do about it. It just does not seem to be an appropriate response.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, how do we go about asking for that kind of information to be brought here?
I would prefer, if council wants to do that, council can do that. I am cognizant of jurisdiction. We were just complaining about another body having jurisdiction into the town. So if council wants to do that, you know, you can put an amendment on.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, please, I'm not asking to become involved in anybody else's jurisdiction. I'm asking someone in that jurisdiction to come here and explain how they intend to exercise within their jurisdiction. I'm just looking for information. That's all. I'm not looking that we become involved in somebody else's business. But we ought to know what the heck is the standard by which an industry like that, whose presence is going to be that heavy within our community, is going to be managed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Durley?
Building on that, would it not be feasible for us to put our concerns together and through our bylaw people, through the chief, send a letter of request to our MP, Welland's MP, St. Catharines MP, to request a formal policy on what they do, and we can use that as a build-up to what our fire chief has already put through as the hit and miss type response that he did get, but we asked for something more concrete, and it would be a request. That way we're not stepping on anybody's toes or going in anybody's jurisdiction. And if they don't want to do that, then we can make that public to say they're not telling us anything.
Yeah, I think staff have been working very, very closely with, as we've heard, Health Canada. I'm not sure what you're asking. You want more information, Councillor?
I'm just building on Councillor Ribbiak saying we don't have any information, so what I'm saying is this is a means by which we might be able to obtain it.
Okay, thank you. Chief?
Mr. Mayor, so what we're currently doing, and I think we might generate some interest if we get enough complaints going in the right direction. So the way we've done it now is that we're bylaw and myself, we've been working fairly closely with these operations. We know them, we visit them, we talk to them, they're very cooperative. So we're doing that, we're just not walking away and saying, you know, it's not my problem, but it is, you know, we're working with them. We did it on the website, and Mark's press release, we're encouraging residents to file a bylaw complaint, so our online complaint form. When they send those in, then we can direct them properly to the website, and they actually have a complaint section on the website. And I think if they receive enough complaints funneled in from one location, they're gonna send somebody. We can't find right now, we can't get anybody to tell us if they have an actual inspector with boots on the ground. They just say, file the complaint on the website. And believe me, we have made a number of calls. We've talked to a lot of people on this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor, I think what we're experiencing on a microcosm level is what the province is experiencing on a bigger level. The feds step in and create a policy and a program, and then it dump it on to the province, and the province drops it on the municipalities, and it keeps going down and down. But there's no money applied to it, there's no authority applied to it, and here we are. And other jurisdictions that have made marijuana legal in the States experienced the exact same thing. At a former AMO conference that we attended, we had speakers from down in the States, and they explained the same thing. And they said, take your time in doing this, make sure you roll it out carefully, you have the right authorities in place, and here we are. So we're very fortunate that the growers at these operations are being cooperative with our staff, because quite frankly, they probably could tell them to get lost, but they are being cooperative. I encourage our staff to continue to nurture that relationship. That's probably our best defense. And to do as the chief says, if you've got a complaint, put it in writing. We'll put it on the website, and let's hammer them with the complaints. I don't think we have any other thing we can do. So.
Thank you, Councillor Papp.
Very quickly, what's stopping us from writing to our 4 MPs and asking for a public information session just to help us at least get started?
Yeah.
I've attended, I think some of us attended, some of our local MPs hold these public information. They're very helpful. It's got nothing to lose. It's all bipartisan. I hate to use that word, but I mean,
Okay.
ask them if they could hold a session just
Okay,
to.
so you want to put that, let's draw this to a conclusion here. Councillor Papp, you want to put that as an amendment?
Yeah, I'm put that as an amendment. I don't want to belabor it, that we forward a request to our 4 local MPs to facilitate a public information session on the development and implementation of medical cannabis in our local communities.
Any cannabis.
See what happens.
Okay. Further discussion to the amendment?
That's good.
Going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? The amendment carries. Thank you, Councillor Papp. Any others to the chief's report on other matters? Thanks for the statistics, Chief, on the service calls, et cetera, that are emanating. Thank you. I'm going to call the question then on the amended resolution. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. As amended. Thank you. Now we move to Human Resources Monthly Report. It's been moved by Councillor Durley. Committee of the Whole received the December 2017, January 2018 Human Resources Monthly Report for information. Questions or comments? Thank you very much for the statistics and the turnovers, et cetera, and some multi-year statistics there as well. Thank you. And we see that there's some changes in the department as well. So we best wishes to the individual that's going off on mat leave, and welcome to the new staff person. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Been moved by Councillor Kersey. Now we've gone into Public Works, that the Committee of the Whole received the Public Works Report Annual Drinking Water Ministry Report 2017 for information. The Committee of the Whole recommend to Council approve the attached MOECC Annual Report. Questions, comments? Thanks to staff for the comprehensive report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Lots of work behind that to comply with that, so thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Lane that Committee of the Whole receive the December 2017, January 2018 Public Works Monthly Report for information. Some great stories there. Thanks for sharing some of the photos. Showing my wife as I was reading this over the weekend, the table that was being developed and put together by staff using resources, etc. Great initiative. Councillor Kersey, I was stalling for time, so you have
Thank you,
something.
Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, I had a question regarding, I see in the report that the manager and purchasing coordinator have met with our architects regarding the FF&Es for the PCC. I wondered if there's any consideration being given to having meeting with user groups such that we could ensure that we haven't overlooked anything from those people that would be doing programming in those areas. And, we can't be everything to everybody, but where there are areas that we could be, now would be an appropriate time to perhaps get some input. So I'd be interested to hear either from the CAO or from our director what the thoughts are there.
Thank you, Madam Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yes, that has happened and continues to happen on an ongoing basis to make sure their input and their needs are being considered in the list.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to reports regarding that. Anyone else to that matter? Anyone else to any of the other matters? Thanks for the statistics on the request for service, PSR. What a huge increase from 579 to 821. Lots of additional resources required to do that. So thank you very much. Plus, pass along our thanks. Councillor Kersey.
One very brief comment, very positive comment. Where I live, we're on the boundary between a neighboring municipality and Pelham. And I must say that the roads in the town of Pelham are cleaned second to none. And you know exactly where the boundary is to the adjacent municipality.
I drive down there.
Because you hold your breath when you drive on the other roads. So kudos to our frontline staff. They're doing a marvelous job.
Thank you.
And Madam Director, please share that with them, if you would, please.
Thank you. Any others? There was a question over the weekend about, on the town's Facebook, I think, or some Facebook, about driving along with the blade up or down or whatever position. So people do watch the snowplows as they go. I guess it was up because they were monitoring the snow and salt. So anyways, thank you for that. Going to call the question on the report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Been moved by Councillor Papp. The Committee of the Whole received the December 2017, January 2018 Recreation, Culture and Wellness Monthly Report for information. Questions, comments? Nice to see as I mentioned to the individual that was here this evening, nice to see the new member for the Summerfest Committee coming forward. So thank you for that. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our director. I'd be interested to hear a little bit about the Public Art Advisory Committee and how you view their role and what they're going to do and how they're going to roll out their mandate. If they had an organizational meeting here, obviously, I don't know whether they got into how they were going to roll out their mandate.
Ms. Van Ravensway.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we've had one meeting with our Public Art Advisory Committee. That meeting was a overview on mainly basically the terms of reference so that we could get everyone on the same page. We also had the education session through the clerk's department, and at that point they elected their chair, their vice, and their secretary. The upcoming meeting, again, we are going to be, it's more of an education on the large scope on public art advisory committees and different types of initiatives and policies. And then we're also going to be looking at our needs throughout this year. So we do have a couple of things that need to be looked at, and opportunities that they can choose to advise council on new initiatives for this year. The following meeting, we would like to have a strategic planning meeting with them so that they can make sure that they understand their goals and where they want to go, so that they're going along in the right direction.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Others to the director's report? Councillor Papp?
30 seconds. Next week, I think we have a transit meeting at the region, the following week.
Yep.
I'm fascinated by your remarks about the riders that want to come from Welland to Pelham because their family doctor is relocated here.
Yes.
That is really interesting. So I don't want to spend time on it. We need to discuss collaboration on that particular, that could mushroom. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Others? Thank you, Ms. Van Ravensway. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Durley. The Committee of the Whole received the December 2017, January 2018 Clerk's Department monthly report for information. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for giving us a statistical overview of last year, and also information on webpage, social media. Councillor Papp, is there something?
I just think it's incredible. You've had 9 civil marriages this year. And they've been civil. For now. I'm sure the lawyers.
The question is, are they civil after they get married?
No, I just find it interesting. 9 to nothing.
9 to nothing.
Just something like that.
All right, with
Okay.
that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor King. The Committee of the Whole received the December 2017, January 2018 Chief Administrator's Monthly Report for information. Questions, comments? Pleased to see that staff are working on the opening and meeting, and I think that's another opportunity, as we said, I think at our last meeting, for the users to get involved, and we look forward to that timing of that. Lots of folks coming forward with ideas and suggestions to me, and I pass them along to staff. Did you have something here about development charges? I can't remember. Yes, you did, that the development charges was starting for the town, that you've met with CM Watson.
The review, yes, that's
Yep,
correct, yes.
yep. So that's good. Good to hear that that initiative
Right.
has progressed and is a new report. So thank you for that. Anything further? Thanks for the other parts in the report.
No, I'm not going to say it.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for the report, Mr. CAO. It's been moved by Councillor Durley that this regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for February 20th, 2018, following council. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.